So it's time to talk about the Duskbloods. I've been anticipating this game for well over a year. They announced it literally back last April, and we finally got our hands on the network test. Now, let me say this right away. This is not going to show you any of my own footage. Personalized footage, like people's recorded stuff from the network test, is currently being taken down. So I just want to say I'm only using the approved B-roll in this video. Believe me, I would love to show you guys my own footage, but alas, we are only going to have to use what is given to us currently. Now, I'm going to do the best that I can to explain and illustrate what I'm talking about, still using the footage that we have access to, because the Duskbloods is a really interesting game, and it's genuinely not what I expected. Now, the purpose of this video isn't to explain every single little mechanic that's in the game. There are plenty of other comprehensive videos that have been done explaining how the game works, and I'm going to touch on it, and especially to illustrate my points where necessary. But really, what this video are going to be my initial impressions, my thoughts, and who I think this is going to be for, and sort of what gamers this is going to resonate with, because unlike a lot of other FROMSOFTWARE games, this one stands alone in kind of a category of its own. In fact, even down to the genre of the game is hard to define. I remember Miyazaki in an interview last year stating that he was really inspired recently by games like Escape from Tarkov, and people heard that line, and especially me, and assumed, oh my god, Miyazaki's making an extraction game, and that's kind of what's, resonating into the Duskbloods. And it's not an extraction game, but there are elements in which you can see that that's where it's being worked into. So the way this video is going to be structured is I'm going to explain what the Duskbloods is, how it works from a moment-to-moment gameplay perspective, what the goal is, and then I'm also going to explain the things that I really like and the things that I also dislike or I have major concerns with. So to start off, the Duskbloods from a high-level perspective is a PvPvE game in which the goal is to essentially get as powerful as possible in the phases that you're given so that you can survive to the end. The game is divided up into a couple of phases, and your job is to basically compete against other players to obtain and score as many points as possible in an elimination style game so that each phase you have enough points to not get eliminated. The players with the lowest score in each phase will be eliminated before the final dusk calling. So in essence, it's a race against the clock game with a lot of elements to it, both PvP oriented and PvE as well. Assuming you survive all of the phases that you're given in a match, you will make it to the very end in which you face off in a PvP arena combat with the remaining players, and everything you've acquired throughout your match will now come into play here to take down the other players and ideally be the only one left standing. Before we go any further though, I do want to thank today's video sponsor. This video is sponsored by Watcher of Realms and their brand new collaboration with Assassin's Creed, and you can get Ezio by simply logging in. Watcher of Realms is a next-generation fantasy RPG with breathtaking visuals, plenty of tactical gameplay to be had, and lots of hack-and-slash combat. Not to mention, it's very player-friendly, has tons of features, and lots of exciting game types. Right now, Watcher of Realms is teaming up with Assassin's Creed to bring you the deepest collab yet, with a brand new story, lots of unique gameplay, and 5 legendary heroes. Yes, including Ezio. But not just him, there's Cassandra, Ivor, Bayek, and Evie Fry will also arrive one after another. There are lots of free rewards just logging in to play, including Assassin's artifacts, more than 130 summoning stones, and much more. In order to celebrate the major collaboration with Assassin's Creed, new players can download the game and get Ezio completely free. There's also an Assassin's Creed knowledge test if you think you're up to the task. Right now, you can download Watcher of Realms for free on PC, Android, or iOS. Join in on all the fun using the link in the description right now or the QR code on your screen to get started today. And don't forget to redeem the gift code FREEEPIC3rd to instantly get your choice epic hero for a head start advantage. Thank you so much to Watcher of Realms for sponsoring. Now back to the video. So in essence, the main mechanics of the game is that it is a battle royale-ish, roguelite-ish game as well. So the first thing to address is obviously what you've been seeing on your screen. It is the base mechanics, the pace of gameplay, and what you can do as a player. Clearly, compared to other FROMSOFTWARE games, this is quite different. The only other, I guess, analog we have is Night Rain, and that is a fairly fast-paced game. I've even joked that after playing Night Rain, it really ruins the pace of base game Elden Ring, or makes it feel incredibly slow by comparison, but it's gotten even crazier now because I think the Duskbloods is going to make even Night Rain feel slow in comparison. not only can you do the surge sprint that was introduced in that game, as you can see, but you can also double jump. You can even basically quadruple jump and dodge in the air. So they've expanded a lot of the mechanics to make you significantly more mobile, agile, and being able to traverse the map very quickly. Now, as far as the core gameplay mechanics and combat go, what you're going to notice is that it is very Bloodborne. Like, obviously, the Duskbloods immediately draws comparisons to Bloodborne and that game, and people thought this is Bloodborne 2. In a way, from a combat perspective, it kind of is. It's at least a spiritual successor to that. Even the HUD is extremely Bloodborne looking. I can't show you, obviously, unfortunately, but just trust me on that one, and I'm probably sure you know that if you've played the game. But there are a lot of, I guess, other aspects of pretty much every single FromSoft game that resonate and come through here. Even stuff like Armored Core, completely outside the Souls series. It feels like literally all of the best lessons that they've learned from a lot of these games have found their way and been integrated in here. For example, the pace of gameplay I would describe very similar to Bloodborne, the player mechanics, dodging, stuff like that, and even the pace of, like swinging weapons and that kind of stuff. I would also say it's very similar to Sekiro because they have essentially the same like stance system. It has a lot of cooperative mechanics that are very Elden Ring. It has the roguelike elements that are extremely Night Rain, but also the Duskbloods is very much its own thing, but you can see that there's a lot of inspiration coming through of prior projects, and so there's a lot of aspects that if you're a big FromSoftware fan, that you will probably appreciate a lot of these. However, at the same time, this is a game that is not really what I was expecting necessarily. I knew it was going to be a PvPvE thing, and I didn't really know to what degree each of these would be integrated in, like how heavy the aspects of each respective genre would be, but I would say that the Duskbloods is about 90% PvP, and that's kind of the rough estimates for how I would describe it anyways, at least in my experience, which again is limited to the network test, but will become more prevalent as I play more of it, and especially in the full game. But right now, that's kind of where I'd place it. When you begin a game, you are given this map, and you get to pick where you spawn in. You select a ring, and it will spawn you in that general vicinity. You don't get to pick your precise spawn location, but you can pick the general area that you want to appear in, and your goal is to load into that area. And typically, one of the first things you are going to want to do is look for these like stakes that are glowing, and you can basically select a spirit summon out of this, more or less. They're called kin in this game, and there are 3 different types. I believe there's ring, blade, and eye. These all have kind of different properties and stuff, and various types, but the one that you get specifically out of this summoning circle is completely random, although it does seem like there's a way to guarantee which kin you get later in the full version of the game. Either way, this is essentially your cooperative, NPC in combat, and you absolutely want to have these as there's really no downside to taking one with you. At this point, your goal is to explore, collect items, kill enemies, and get as much virtue as you can. Virtue is the number that's always in the top left corner that is essentially the level and the score at that which you need to, eliminate other players. You want to have the highest virtue possible, and the players with the lowest virtue at the end of each respective phase will be eliminated. Now, there are about 1 million different ways that you can go about acquiring virtue in the match, and I'm not going to go over every single one because essentially almost anything you do will eventually acquire virtue, whether you're going after and just killing bosses, if you're just trying to kill regular enemies and collect items. Pretty much every single action more or less will grant you some kind of virtue. You can collect them from statues. Like there's a ton of different ways, which means you can ultimately play the game how you want to play and still stand a fighting chance. There are going to be strategies and ways to play that are significantly more efficient, but at the same time, this does give you the amount of freedom that you can play more or less how you want. However, there are a few highly advised things, especially in the last couple of phases. There will be these ritual areas that will appear on the map and you can spawn into pretty much at any time. One of the interesting things about this game is that you can fast travel at virtually any point within the game. You can go anywhere at any time as long as you're not in combat and as long as you haven't recently teleported. When you go to a ritual area in the match, you get to choose either a yellow stone, these gold stones that you can pick up, and they will grant you more virtue when you interact with these pillars, or you can pick up a red bloodstone and you will get increased virtue from killing other bloodsworn or other, real players. Now, the reason you want as much virtue in the match as humanly possible is not only because it helps you survive the culling and make it to the final phase, but the higher your virtue value is, the more health you will also have in the final dusk phase when you're facing off against the real players. Now, the other thing is, during the match itself, you do have chances to be cooperative with one another. If you're facing down a really difficult boss, which are called trespassers in this game, there is a high probability that when you go to fight them, it will immediately summon other players within the match to cooperate with you and take it down. You could be running and doing your business, and then you'll get a notification that says somebody wants help with the boss, and you can go choose to do that, and you will split the virtue amongst yourselves. But regardless of the alliances that you make during the match, they will all be nulled and dissolved before the final Dusk match, where you actually do have to face off against one another. But still, being cooperative with people can be incredibly useful, or if you're hunting down other Bloodsworn, especially if you've interacted with that red pillar and you've gotten the Bloodstones, that can also be very advantageous as well. Just like a roguelite, there are extremely high amounts of variance that can happen every single match. In between phases, you'll get essentially this modifier that can be different map events. There can be a Zeppelin, which people can literally call in airstrikes. There is a magnetism storm, which will swap players' positions on the map. There's all kinds of things that will make the match-to-match experience very different. You will never have one run that looks like the other, and that is especially apparent because of the unpredictable nature of a PvP-oriented game. No match will ever feel repetitive, and that is definitely an aspect that I think is quite good. Now, I do want to talk about all the things that I really liked about the Duskbloods, and in my experience, just some more personal anecdotes. The first thing is the combat. I mean, every single time they up the ante and they introduce new mechanics and expand the ceiling of what these games can be. Every time you think that they've figured it out or that they've, peaked in some sense, they always add something new. The amount of different player mechanics in this game is staggering, and it also means that the game is going to have a ridiculously high skill ceiling, but it's also so much fun to learn. There are so many different mechanics from prior Souls games that will be fun to integrate here. There is a parry system in which every single player can howl, and you can stop players' attacks and get massive stagger damage, and then get a critical off of that. There are even weapons that you can shoot, like projectiles. You have all of the tried and true fundamentals of light and heavy attacks and dodge rolling from Bloodborne and all that kind of good stuff. Like, the combat is fantastic. I also absolutely love the world, the aesthetic, and the vibe that this game has gone for so far. And we haven't really been able to immerse ourselves too much into it because, really, the game is not only fast-paced and we've only played a handful of games, but we don't even have the full extent of what it's going to be because there are going to be apparently 3 different maps when the full game launches, and we've only played one map so far in the network test. So there'll be a lot to explore for sure. However, I will say that this is kind of where some of my areas of concern are, because one of the really good things they do have in the game is that you can play the Duskbloods in a non-network environment. They have these remembrance fights where it basically shows you how to play the game. It is a tutorial because there are a ton of mechanics to learn, and so there's a lot of menus that explain how to do stuff. So they have these offline instances in which you can explore the Land of Dusk and play this for yourself, but it's essentially a simulation of what an online match will be. It's also going to be interesting because I believe there are going to be 14 Bloodsworn characters in the game, and so far in the network test we only have like 6. It's a very limited amount, but that's fine because there are plenty to learn even within these. Every character is completely unique. They have their own individual skills, weapons, passives, and so on, and the way that these interact is going to be like infinitely interesting, and especially with the full roster of characters will be even better. It's not like a traditional RPG where you choose like individual weapons for characters and all that stuff. Like, they kind of come as they are. It's similar more to like a fighting game that way, and it actually kind of plays like that fundamentally. Let me just put this forward right now. As somebody who's not really into Souls games or FromSoftware games necessarily for PvP, like, that's just not an aspect that I particularly go out of my way to experience. I don't play Souls games for the PvP. I know a lot of people do. I'm just not one of them. I really enjoy the PvE experiences in those games, and that's where I find the most enjoyment. But for somebody like me who's not really big on PvP in these games at all, this is, I would say, probably the the best way to experience what is FromSoftware PvP. Your mind might immediately jump to like Elden Ring Coliseum combat, and like there are, I guess, some fundamentals that are similar, but really it's not the same at all. Like there's not a Souls game with its PvP that is quite like this. This is fundamentally designed from the ground up to be the Duskbloods PvP, and it's its own brand of good, and I've really enjoyed the PvP stuff in this because it is one of the better elements. But at the same time, I do want to say that this is where a few of my big concerns come in, because as much as the PvP is amazing, the game has an extreme amount of depth, and I think is going to have a ridiculously high skill ceiling. I also think that this is going to be a turnoff for some people as well. Once again, as I stated, I've never really been massively into Souls PvP stuff. That's just, again, not really the most appealing thing to me, but I do think that the Duskbloods was a little more PvP oriented than even I was expecting. There are like a lot of PvE stuff that you can do, and even there's some endgame content that apparently is going to not end in PvP encounters, but you guys teaming up to fight some massive bosses, which is a cool prospect, very similar to Night Rain in that way. But really, the game is made for PvP enjoyers, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing inherently, it's just that is going to be a turnoff for some people. I'm enjoying it so far, and the PvP is actually the best part of the game as it is right now. But this is also going to introduce a host of potential problems that I can already see coming. First and foremost is the fact that it is a PvP setting is that it is always online play, meaning you can't really just go offline and chill and play this. I mean, you can even play Night Rain offline, even though that is a primarily online game. There's not really much of an experience to be had if you're not playing an active online encounter. That, on top of the fact that PvP is inherently going to be the case that there will always be an evolving meta. There will always be an increasingly high skill ceiling of this game, and with a game already as difficult to learn as this one is going to be, I think it's going to be extremely pronounced. I do want to add the caveat that in the full game, I expect there to be a lot more remembrance fights that are like PvE oriented things that are actually like offline experiences, and I don't know how depthful those are going to be. I can imagine you playing them to like upgrade your character and stuff like that, but really the penultimate experience that you're supposed to get to at the end of the day is still a match of Dusk online with other players and being the last one to survive. That is the gameplay goal at the end of the day. Also, the fact that it is a Switch 2 exclusive has been quite strange to say the least, especially making for an ultra competitive game like this. One of the double-edged swords of the Duskbloods, in my experience, is the, I guess, pace of game, its kind of overstimulating nature, and how quick the game demands you to be. The positive side to this is that it's similar to Night Rain, where it's like, it feels like every second counts. You are engaged from the second the match begins to the very end of whoever gets decided the winner. But at the same time, that also means it's not really a game that you can like just sit back and chill and play. The intensity is something that I think is going to be like difficult for a lot of people to stomach, especially over long periods. I played a couple matches and I felt satisfied with it. I felt happy about them and I felt good with what I played, but I also felt kind of like exhausted, like I just ran a marathon. It's a sweaty game through and through, which is even more kind of confusing considering it's a Switch 2 exclusive, because I don't know how people are really gonna play this realistically on Joy-Cons. They don't really seem that they're up to the task to be able to handle the tactileness and preciseness that this game requires. I've been playing it on a Pro controller and that's been good, but like I can only imagine playing on Joy-Cons would be an actual nightmare because this game is like very technically demanding. The mechanical skill and precision is going to be astronomical, which is not a bad thing inherently. And again, it's something that for my own perspective is something that I'll probably really enjoy. I really want to play this better and, you know, master it and just get even better and as I get more experience. But that is not going to be something that is necessarily appealing to everybody, especially if there isn't a more chill like PvE component to it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to draw this comparison, but I'm going to do it anyways. It kind of reminds me a little bit of Bungie's Marathon, where I think that they made a fundamentally amazing game from its mechanics to its world, and the way that it plays is incredible, but it really suffered from, I guess, a narrower audience because there wasn't a more relaxed way to play the game in its setting. Like, I think the Duskbloods Duskbloods is going to be one of those games that I really got to be in the mood for. It's not something that I can just quickly boot up and maybe have like a show on in the background while I'm watching or whatever. Like, it will demand your full and honest attention the entire time, and even if you're doing that, it will be exhausting to play after a while, especially, you know, with how much it demands of you. I don't know the extent to which they are adding other ways to experience the game, because they made this, again, amazing world that I really want to explore, but it's difficult to even take it in or absorb it when the pace of gameplay is astronomical. It's going to be one of the challenges that hopefully they can find a way to overcome, and I hope they do, because I really enjoy the game. It's strange and it's not really what I expected, but I am having a lot of fun with it. As I played more and more of it, it kind of dawned on me that it was always going to be this way. Miyazaki is a very forward-thinking game developer, so to expect him just to make the same exact thing he's made before, like Bloodborne 2 or Elden Ring 2, was just never going to happen. This is something that definitely pushes the boundaries of what these games are, as pretty much all of their titles have been in various degrees. But I would also say that it really doesn't serve the same function as a lot of the other Souls titles or other games that you'd be familiar with that you would expect this to be like, as it does pull a lot of inspiration from these, but it is ultimately its own thing, and it kind of is its own genre. It's a roguelike battle royale that's also a fighting game fundamentally. It's very strange, it's a lot of fun, it's something I've never really quite experienced before, and it's something that I'm anticipating playing more of and hopefully getting, you know, really good at and really understanding how this game works and just becoming a more experienced player over time. It's a lot of fun to play, and I do recommend everybody at least try it out once if you can, but I also think it's important to keep expectations in check, in that if you are not really a PvP enjoyer, this game is going to be maybe a little bit less inclined for you to get into. Not that it's impossible, and even if you've never really enjoyed PvP in Souls games like me, this is something that is made for this game, and you might find it that it's better in a different context. If you are already a Souls PvP enjoyer, then you will probably feel right at home, because I think that this what this game is. If Night Rain was a PvE game, you know, for those kinds of players, the Duskbloods is the PvP player's game. Now, I'm sure there are a lot more elements and dimensions of the Duskbloods that we haven't seen, they haven't announced, and that we haven't experienced yet until the full release of the game, and expect a more thorough review once the full game does release at some point. We still don't have an official date on when that is, but it is still slated to come out in 2026, so probably within the next couple months, and considering the game that the state that the game is in right now, I wouldn't imagine it's too far away. But either way, let me know what you guys think about the Duskbloods down below, and I hope this was useful to listen to, and I hope you learned something. Thank you guys for watching, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace. Don't forget to download Watcher of Realms to experience the new Assassin's Creed collab for free today. The link is in the description and will be available for free for anyone to play and enjoy. Thank you.